morning, Jamelah, and welcome to the Low Carb Paleo Show.
Good morning, Chef Alain. How are you?
I am well, thank you. Good morning, Monsieur Marc. Comment ça
Good
va?
morning. I'm well, thank you. I'm very well, as usual.
Okay, good for you. Good for everybody. I'm a little
Yes.
bit under the weather. Jamelah, you are the co-owner with Dorielle Price. I hope I said that right.
Yes.
Of EasyPeasie, a family-owned business focused on helping babies and picky eaters learn to love veggies.
Yes.
Now, we want to know more about this. How did you and Dorielle come up with this idea?
Yes. Thank you for asking. That's one of our favorite questions. So Dorielle is my younger sister, and I was taking a break between my hospital jobs, and she asked me to be her nanny for her second baby boy. She had to go back to work earlier than she anticipated, and was going to have to, because of the type of work she was doing, not be able to pump breast milk and give the baby pump breast milk after she was returning to work. Like all moms, she had some guilt about this, and she was doing research and reading, and she asked me what I thought about babies that were breastfed versus babies that were babies that were bottle formula fed, and how they learn to explore foods as toddlers. I thought the question was quite interesting. There was some information in the lay press about it at the time, and I did a literature review about that, and most of the literature was actually in the nutrition literature, not so much in the pediatric literature. But it turns out that babies that are exposed to breast milk are getting exposed to, in very, very small amounts, to the flavors of the food that mom is eating through the breast milk. And of course, formula fed babies, because they get kind of the same boring formula all the time, they don't get those exposures. And so the hypothesis from the nutritionist, and this research is over 30 years old now, so it's pretty well established in the nutrition space, is that flavor learning starts very early. Actually, even some suggestion in utero based on what mom is eating when the baby is inside. And that flavor learning actually continues through the first year of life when the baby is breastfeeding. So my sister and I, even though the baby wasn't going to be able to breastfeed or feed expressed breast milk, wanted to figure out a way to give the baby repeated exposures in small amounts to flavors that we wanted him to acquire a taste for. And I don't have to tell you that humans don't need to learn to love sugar. Humans don't need to learn to love salt. But some of the more complex flavors of vegetables, in particular some of the cruciferous ones, can be a little challenging for kids to acquire, and adults as well. So that's pretty much how we started EasyPeasie. It was really our way to try to give the baby exposures as much as possible, as early as possible. We dried up lots of vegetables in our dehydrator and ground them into powder and mixed them into his baby bottle, which was predictably a disaster. When you rehydrate vegetables, sometimes they clump together and it was clogging the bottle. By the time we got a good recipes together and we got the grind fine enough, the boy was on to baby cereals. And at that point, it became a much easier endeavor to add some veggie flavors in very tiny amounts to all of the foods that he was eating. So that was pretty much the origin of EasyPeasie. It was really our opportunity. At the end of the day, nothing can match breast milk in terms of what babies need, in terms of antibodies and proteins and the macronutrient and the micronutrient profile, in addition to all of these really cool things about flavor learning that happens through breast milk. So this wasn't our, when a baby can't do that, this was kind of an opportunity for us to figure out a way to give babies, at least the baby in our family, exposures to the flavors of that flavor learning that happens in the first year of life. Is pretty critical.
Mm-hmm. Can you please describe your products for us?
Yes, so it's literally, think of it like a seasoning, so like an onion powder or garlic powder, where you basically take the whole vegetable, dry it, and then grind it into a powder. So it's the same process that we do as you would do to make an onion or garlic powder, for example. But we dry carrots, there's green peas in all of our blends. That's why we call it EasyPeasie. But we dry peas, carrots, squash, sweet potatoes, kale, spinach, beets. We dry them and grind them into a powder. So it's like, I actually have an example here. That's one. We put it in like a seasoning container. That's an example of one of them. These are actually our new labels, but we dry it and grind it into a powder. So it's shelf stable. It's an easy way to mix in the flavors to whatever the kids are eating. We found in our home experiments that the flavors are reduced. They're not as strong in the dried form. So it was kind of a nice way for us to stair step the kids from a little bit of veggie flavor to increasing amounts based on how much you add to their foods. And you can add them to drinks as well.
Mm. On your website, I noticed that you have a concept called Pellet priming. Can you explain that?
Yes. So just as we were speaking, when you asked me about our origins, why we started doing, creating the products, palate priming happens in the natural world in terms of babies getting exposed to different flavors based on what mom is eating in utero, and then based on what mom is eating in the first year of life if the baby is breastfeeding for the first year of life. So it's basically what your nose and your tongue get used to, in a sense. It's what your nose and tongue find familiar is the palate priming. And the goal for our kids and our product, it eventually became a product, but initially it was just our little home veggie recipe trickery, was to expose their palates, their tongue and their nose to a variety of vegetable flavors and smells.
Okay. You mentioned that you mix different vegetables. Do you have different choices, as in the powders, or is it just one main and then?
Yes. We have three main flavors now. I'll show you them. We have our original one is carrots, peas, and squash. Okay. This one was the first one we did, and we brought that one to our farmers markets first because at home for my sister's kids, we got that into their scrambled eggs and their applesauce and yogurt without them noticing the flavor very much. We felt very successful with that one. And then we decided to get a little adventurous and add some cruciferous flavors. So this one is our green blend. That one is carrots, peas, sweet potatoes, kale, and spinach. Mm-hmm. And then I really liked playing around with different colors. And this one has carrots, beets, peas, and squash, and it will actually turn light colored foods red. We were a little hesitant about that one for the kids initially because the first two that we created are very light in color and kind of easy to disguise in terms of the look of them. You can definitely taste the vegetables and smell them, but the color masks very well with, all things toddler, mac and cheese and grilled cheese and all of those things on the kids' meal menu that pediatricians have problems with sometimes. But the red blend is fun. It actually will turn the food color, but we weren't sure how the kids were going to receive it because this time the gig was up at that point. But by that point, my sister's kids were older, maybe on the order of 4 and 6, and they actually liked the adventure of turning their food colors with the different flavors. And for us, it was, a win-win because the more color they added to their food, the more vegetable flavors they were adding to their food. Right. So we felt pretty happy about that. So we those are our three main blends.
So that was a kind of a fun thing for the kids too. I probably could use the green one. I still have trouble with eating kale.
Me too. Yes, me too. I'm with you on that. My sister loves kale, and I always tell people I'm proud of the green blend because as a non-kale lover or person who's learning to love kale, I'm proud of that blend. I like it. I travel with it.
So you sort of alluded already. So how would parents use your products? And
Yeah. So
obviously sprinkle on, I would say, like you say, scrambled eggs, soups, and what else?
yes, that's excellent. We do. And actually our families get quite creative. We have the ideas that we've developed within our own family, and we are in touch with a lot of our customers through social media, and they send us pictures of all kinds of things that they're doing with their Easy Peasy. But yes, Chef, you mentioned soups, definitely scrambled eggs. Applesauce is the way that we sample it at our farmers markets, just because it's easy to transport applesauce, and most families, most kids like applesauce, and they kind of know what the flavor of applesauce is, so it's an easy way to let them try the flavors of the blends in comparison to plain applesauce. Yogurt is another one. We have families that mix it into the spreads that kids like, so like peanut butter or Nutella, for example. And then in terms of other types of baking, we mix it in when we're doing cookies or brownies, pancakes. The flavor, again, is quite mild. I mean, like any seasoning, the more you add, the more you'll taste. So, depending on how much veggie flavors the families want to come through, you can pretty much add it to anything. And you can vary the amount that you add based on how veggie you want your food to taste.
Mm. I still have a hard time imagining green yogurt.
Yes, I know. Well, the fun thing for us, as adults, kids do all kinds of interesting things. One of the things that I recommend to families when we're trying to get kids to learn, vegetables in practice, is that kids sometimes like to dip things. They like having a sauce, but the dips that they pick are sometimes, let's say, like a yogurt, for example. They might want to dip a stalk of broccoli in yogurt, and as an adult, I might pass on that. But for the kid, it's fun for them. If they like it and they'll eat it, I tell the families, go for it, let them do it. It doesn't mean that they'll always eat their broccoli that way. The most important thing at that point is just to let them explore, let them enjoy it. It is quite a different experience behaviorally when kids get to make choices, and they have, in terms of behaviors that we want them to repeat, if it's happening in a positive context versus us standing over them and saying, you have to do this or else, or setting it up with a negative consequence. It definitely makes a difference in terms of how likely the child is to repeat that behavior when no one's watching. And at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is give families a way to help kids set intentions in a positive way, so that when they're older and grown-ups, they can make good food choices, not because mom or dad or auntie is standing over them and making them do it.
So you put the shaker, you make the shaker available to the kids, to the babies, or you start by sneaking it in and then you let them experiment with it?
Yes. So every family is different, and the families usually have a pretty good sense of what type of exploratory kid they have. So I'll give you kind of extreme examples. I have, some families, one particular family that I'm thinking about, they used to let their daughter, when she was 2 or 3, they had the shaker on the table, and they would instead of poking out all of the holes in it, they would just poke out one hole so it doesn't come out too fast, and they would just let her shake it onto her food. And she called it her salt. She must have been a little bit older, probably around the order of 3. So she liked the idea of adding salt to her food, and she made her feel like a grown-up at the table, that she could add her own seasoning. So there definitely are families, and then this same child, actually, sometimes the parents would just kind of make a little round pile of Easy Peasy on her plate, and she would just take her food and kind of dip it into the powder. I've seen a lot of families use it that way as well. So there are definitely some kids who are exploratory and are excited about having something on their own that they can do. And then, yes, on the other extreme, there are definitely families that say, I changed the label, I turn it around in the cabinet so the kids can't see it. If their kids are old enough to read, they definitely hide it, and then don't want the secret to get out. So there are definitely extremes, and either way is fine with us. At the end of the day, our goal really is to kind of let the child's palate, the nose and the tongue, warm up to the flavors and the smell. You can teach the brain, even if the kid doesn't know that they're learning. You're still teaching the tongue and the nose. So, it's really up to each family how they want to, treat it in the family as like a secret or not a secret.
Right. This may sound obvious as a question, but is your product just for babies or for all ages?
Yeah, that's a great question, and not obvious at all. So in our family, it was our goal was to kind of get the kids warmed up to veggie flavors. But in the process over the last 4 years of meeting customers, we get feedback from customers all the time that adults, customers use it for themselves. I also have a lot of adult customers that are kind of in that age between caring for their parents and caring for their children. And they use it for their aging parents as well, that sometimes are picky eaters, and as well as their children, as well as themselves. So it's not an obvious question at all. And we were surprised for us actually about how many adults were using it for themselves as well. I guess adults need to learn vegetable flavors too.
Yeah, some adults. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, a little more difficult question. How do you source your ingredients, and can you tell us about their quality?
Yes, I can. So we actually work with commercial kitchens now. When we were doing this product at home for our family, we were getting our vegetables from our local farmers market or grocery store and using our own dehydrator. Now that we sell the product across the state lines, we're in Florida, but we sell all over the country, actually international as well. We have to work out of commercial kitchens. So we work with our commercial kitchen partners and let them source the vegetables. We try as much as possible to source as local. We have a few kitchens that we work out of. We try to have them sourced as local to their those kitchens as possible. Sometimes when the growing season is not possible for us to have things here in North America, they will source out of Europe and sometimes South America as well. I trust our partners, and we do our quality checks in terms of safety, shelf life testing, and stability. And it's been good. It's been good so far. At 20 years from now with EasyPeasie, we might be able to have our own farm that we're growing and doing our own drying and grinding. Now it makes the most sense to work with our commercial kitchen partners that are sourcing ingredients for other products as well. It helps us keep our price affordable for most of our families.
Yeah, I guess my concern is, this is a big thing with me, is GMO products and glyphosate sprayed vegetables.
Mm-hmm.
Are you doing some quality control on that?
Well, we think that most vegetables, in terms of our vegetables are not GMO, but yes, as you know, non-GMO vegetables, GMO vegetables, and even kind of by overspray, there's definitely organic vegetables that are being exposed to those pesticides. The good news for families is that in general, the exposure risk is low. So for most of those products, by washing them and cleaning them, the exposure risk for the people that are applying the pesticides is the highest. I mean, obviously they're in direct contact and they're inhaling the product as well. But yes, I definitely, share those concerns. And, with products that are exposed versus products that are not exposed, there's, different risks to either or. We want our families to have vegetable choices and do the best that they can to choose the safest vegetables that they can for their family. And we try to do the same with EasyPeasie.
Yeah, as you know, babies are the most sensitive one to any kind of exposures to poison like Roundup and glyphosate. Yes. Are your products allergen free?
We do work in a kitchen that also processes tree nuts and eggs. And this is on our website for our families as well. Those products are present in the kitchen, but not on the same equipment that EasyPeasie gets packaged on. So every family, there are some children that are sensitive to the point where they can't even be in the same room with their allergen. For most kids, it has to be at the level that it's a high enough level in the food present in the food that they're eating in order for them to have an exposure. But we do mention that on our website for families that have kids that can be sensitive to even being present in the room with the allergen.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Are you going to food shows any coming soon?
Oh, no, we actually did our first food show last fall. We did Natural Products Expo East in Baltimore, which was fun, really fun for us. And the first time we kind of got out amongst other food people. We decided not to do West this year. East was much closer for us, being in Florida. It was just a kind of a trip up I-95 to Baltimore. We decided the expense of going to Expo West this year would be too much for us. But maybe next year, if we plan well for 2021 Expo West, we will try to get out to California.
All right, cool. Well, I'll let Mark ask the rest of the questions. Mark?
Okay.
Quick, basic question. You might have mentioned it, but I missed it.
Yeah.
At what age can you start using EasyPeasie?
Oh, great. That is a great question. So the Academy of Pediatrics, this is me with my pediatrician hat on. We recommend that children are exclusively formula or breastfed for the first 6 months of life, if families can do that. Most children show readiness for solid foods somewhere around 5 to 6 months of age. So for every family, it's, once their child is showing readiness for solids. Our base blend is carrots and peas. There are carrots and peas in all of our blends. So we tell families that once your child is ready for solids and your child has had carrots and peas, at least, that's kind of our base blend, then you can start adding EasyPeasie to their baby foods and soft stage 1 foods.
But seeing as it's a mixable powder, you couldn't start introducing it to the milk itself?
Well, again, in our own family, that was our goal. That's how we started out. I would probably do different types of bacterial testing, and I have different thresholds for that if I was going to do that product for babies under 6 months of age. So I would not recommend it for babies under 6 months of age, doing it in their formula, but older babies that have the immune system and their own bacterial flora in order to handle essentially a raw vegetable product as they get older, it's safe for them.
Oh, super job. Now the other thing I didn't quite see is it there just to acclimatize youngsters to flavors, or is it also for nutrition?
Yes, that's an excellent question. So for us, and the way that we use it in our own family and the way that we recommend it for families to use is as a palate primer, a way to introduce the flavors to the nose and the tongue. I have to tell you that almost every family that we meet at farmers markets asks me, well, how much of this is equal to X amount of vegetables, because they want to use it as a substitute. So we have answered that question because we got asked the question so much. We will tell people the ratios. But again, I always go back to my pediatrician hat and say to the families, this is not a veggie substitute. This is a bridge to whole vegetables. And this doesn't get you off the hook for putting whole vegetables on the table, for being an example and eating your vegetables yourself as the adult in the household. We really do, want families to know that this is a tool to get their kids onto the whole veggie, but not a veggie substitute.
Super. I want to take you back almost to your beginnings somewhat. You glided through the process quite quickly, how you came from sort of working on a kitchen top to going into commercial production. I'm guessing that wasn't as straightforward as many people might think it was.
Yes, it was about, in terms of the time, yes, it was. I did glide through it, but it was at least a 2 to 3 year process. From when Dorielle and I had the idea of what we were going to do, and then got our own home equipment, got our dehydrator going, and we had different methods of grinding our vegetables. We used mortar and pestle, we used a coffee grinder. You know, it was quite a science experiment within our own family of, you know, the process of doing it at home. And then, yes, finding kitchens that could do it comparably to how we were doing it at home, basically scaling your recipe from your kitchen top to what a commercial kitchen can do for you. It took us a good year to find a co-packer that we were comfortable with. And again, you know, we trust our co-packer to source our ingredients. So it was very important for us to not just pick anyone. We did visits on site, and we still visit our kitchens at least once a year. So yes, it was quite a process for sure.
I'm guessing at some point there, you knew it worked for your family.
Mm-hmm.
What was it that gave you the indication that, hey, we might be onto something for other families, and we might even have, you know, a product we can, you know, share with other people?
Yeah.
What were the stages that took you through that?
Mark, that's a great question. And I laugh because so my sister, we did have at least 6 months probably of trying the natural blend, which was the carrots, peas, and squash, and the green blend with the kale and spinach, where we were giving it to my sister's kids, and we would mix it in their applesauce, and we'd stand over in the corner and just watch and say, oh, they don't know. Okay, that's going well. Let's add more next time and see. And I said, at some point, I said to my sister, because we're both scientists, I'm a pediatrician and she's an engineer. And I said to her, you know, we're all genetically related, because we'd let our parents try it. My dad, we would get him all the time. We made a pumpkin pie, and we swapped out the sugar in the pumpkin pie for our red blend, which is the carrots and beets and peas and squash. They're all naturally sweet, but, you know, not added sugar. And he didn't notice. And, you know, I said to my sister, maybe all of our palates are not good. You know, maybe we don't have good taste buds, or, you know, I personally, I know my nose is not very strong, which is a benefit in pediatrics. But at some point, what we decided is we just had to try it. We decided to just go to a farmer's market and let other people try it. That was really the only way we were going to know. So our first year in 2016, our first year at the farmer's market was amazing because, you know, we had this thing. At that point, we had it for 2 years, and we were, you know, trying it in our own family with our own friends, and we were making blends for other people. And finally, we were like, okay, let's see how people receive this. And it was so amazing. It was very positive, and, you know, families that came back and families that would refer their friends to us. And yeah, so it definitely was, it took a while before we really had, I think, a denominator large enough that we felt like, you know, okay, it's not just us that can't taste it in small amounts. We really are onto something here.
Yeah, super. Now, can you remember the first person outside the family who said, hey, this is good?
I do. I don't know her name, but I actually think of her often. Our very first customer, I do remember her. If I saw her on the street, I would know her. It was in the first market we did was in Sanford, Florida, which is a little town outside Orlando. And they have a really beautiful farmer's market. I hope they're still doing it in downtown Sanford around this really beautiful fountain. And I remember her. I have to ask my sister if she remembers her as clearly, but I do remember our first customer.
Excellent. Yeah. Now, it's little things like that just stick in the mind, isn't it?
Yes, they do.
So, you've got up to 3 products now, yeah?
Yes.
What do you see happening in the future? You're going to expand on that?
I do. And actually we have, so the 3 products that I showed earlier are what we call our EasyPeasie classics. Those are our, the blends that are our staples, our bases, and we usually have some surplus of those, and sometimes they're on Amazon in addition to being on our own website. Last year, we experimented with adding our vegetables and spices together. So again, with our goal being to give families ways to expand kids' palates that don't involve adding sugar and don't involve adding salt. So we were taking our vegetable flavors and mixing them with different spices. And we had 2 different spice lines last year that were actually quite popular. We did our natural blend, which is the carrots, peas, and squash. We added that with turmeric and cayenne pepper and made just a very mild, as you know, turmeric can be quite a strong flavor. And I think even adults probably sometimes look for ways to kind of tamp that down a little bit. So I was really proud of that blend, but I actually think we had more adult customers for that than kids. And then over the fall, we used our red blend as a base and made a ginger blend. So it was our red blend, which is carrots, beets, peas, and squash. And then we added a little ginger and cinnamon. And that went fantastically. We sold out. We didn't make that many units of them because we just kind of wanted to, see how people received it. But it went quite well. I loved it. It was my morning friend in my tea and my coffee. It just, when you warm those flavors, when they kind of get on your nose, it's just such a nice aromas for the fall. So I think that we'll probably we do those in kind of our limited edition is what we call them. So we'll probably re-release our limited editions this year. We also did, we had a little batch of broccoli from a farm in Canada that we mixed in with our natural blend to make a broccoli blend. And that was actually quite popular as well. It was a really fun combination because the broccoli was actually quite sweet from that batch. But so it wasn't, the cruciferous flavors weren't very strong, but the smell of the broccoli was definitely there. So I was confident that the palate priming was happening, even though the broccoli flavor wasn't very strong. So that one actually went quite well. We may or may not redo that one this year as well.
Super job. So can we look forward to seeing some maybe more exotic flavors coming across the aisles?
Absolutely. Yeah, I love it.
And what about seasonal ones?
The seasonals? I think we'll definitely bring the ginger blend back in the fall. And then the turmeric, because it did go quite well, we'll bring that one back in the late summer as well.
Super job. So at the moment, you're really just concentrating on powders that help increase children's palates or even adults' palates.
Yes.
Are you going to move on from that type of product to something maybe different?
Oh, we don't have any other plans right now to expand outside of our kind of powder palette priming experience. But time will tell.
Super job.
Yeah. I assume as a doctor and your sister being very busy, so
Yes.
there's only so many hours you can work. I mean, it's
Sure.
already impressive how you managed to grow this business internationally. So
Thank you.
good for you. So we're not going to push for more, a lot more.
Yes. Well, my sister and I are always entertaining whether it's time to bring on some more permanent staff, kind of expand our capabilities. Our business is still young and we're just barely making our goals in terms of our sales, and our new product development always costs extra money as well. So maybe in the next year or two, we'll be able to have enough resources to bring on permanent staff. I always think the challenge of small business is, you try to do as much as you can with as little as possible. But at some point you get to that kind of breaking point where you realize that you've maxed out all of your resources. And in order to do more, you have to spend more. You have to bring more people in. So we may be getting there.
Excellent. Now, you did mention earlier that, maybe in 10, 20 years' time, you'll have your own farm and source all your own vegetables that way.
Yes.
Obviously, that gives you complete control.
Mm-hmm.
Would you be interested in hearing from farmers who may have, really top quality organic produce that you could use?
Yes, absolutely. You can definitely put us in touch. One of the things, Mark, that we don't talk about this a lot in our social media, but it's one of the things that I really love about what we're able to do with this product is, as you probably know, in the American produce market, in terms of the consumer market, it's very strange in that sometimes American consumers want their vegetables to look perfect, and which is an interesting concept. It's definitely not something that I think our ancestors intended for us. So there's lots of produce that gets rejected from being available in grocery stores because of the look of them. And the awesome news about dried vegetables is that, you know, obviously we can't dry imperfect vegetables in terms of like spoiled, or it's not that type of imperfect. And I'm saying, I know that you know this, I'm also saying this for the audience. But vegetables that are perfectly intact and don't look perfect enough to go on a store shelf are perfectly fine to get dried and ground or, you know, sliced, or, you know, julienned, or, you know, something else. So it's kind of like a natural repurposing, I guess. And I feel really good about that as a person on earth, that we're giving farms an opportunity to do something with produce that might have otherwise been thrown away.
Excellent. I mean, if anybody's got wonky vegetables, you want them.
Yes. I love that. Yes, send them on.
Super job. Super job. Now, I did say if farmers can get in touch with you, can you tell us your website and your social media contact places?
Oh, yes, absolutely. So our main website is easypeasie.com. Let me see if it's, I'm looking at our little sign back there. So let me see if I can find it up here. That's EasyPeasie.com. And then actually our social media is, sorry, this is so wobbly at the bottom there. That's EasyPeasie on Facebook, and on Instagram and Pinterest and Twitter, we're at EasyPeasie Co. With the CO at the end.
Excellent.
And then in terms of reaching out to us, you can always find us, it's on our website as well, but contact, CONTACT, at easypeasie.com will reach us if you need to find us by email.
Excellent. Super job.
So you sell your products on your website, on Amazon, and where else? Retail stores as well?
This is our big year for retail. So we actually got some nice leads from Natural Products Expo in the fall. Our current batch, which are featuring our new labels that are not even on the store shelves yet. You guys are seeing them first. Our new batch is over in our kitchen right now. So we should have this up in the next 2 to 3 weeks. And we're going to go back to the contacts that we made at Natural Products Expo and see if we can get into some retail this year. But currently it's our website, Amazon, and occasionally where we're at our farmers markets locally in South Florida or Central Florida.
Okay.
Super job. Excellent. Well, that's everything from me. I think you've given us a really nice, good background and, you know,
oh, good,
history of what's been going on.
Yes.
Super.
Thank you. Thank you.
And
that was really fun.
Anything you think we should have asked you and didn't?
No, that was really fun. Thank you for letting me go on. Sometimes when I'm doing my farmers markets and people ask me, oh, how'd you start this? And I start from my sister had this baby and she couldn't breastfeed. They're like, I could see their eyes like rolling back in their head. Like they wish they wouldn't have asked that question. So thank you for letting me go on about our little baby. We're really proud of this this project that kind of started out as just a way to trick my sister's kids. And, you know, we're really happy to be helping lots of families out there.
Yeah, and obviously the proof is in the pudding. I take it all of your sister's kids now and other kids that you have used the product, they're all vegetable mad, I take it.
They're all vegetable lovers. Well, you know, the little one, so the one that we actually started EasyPeasie for, he was the most resistant. Her older kid, the one, she was able to breastfeed him for probably almost a year and a half, or maybe a little bit longer. And his palate is very well developed. So he'll pretty much try anything, and he actually will prefer produce to processed foods, which we're really proud of. The little one is the one we had to work on. And it is interesting, in her own family, she really did have kind of the breastfed toddler and the formula fed toddler. But when he was about 3 or 4 years old, they were at a martial arts class, and she sent me a picture. He asked her if he could have some carrots, and she said, oh my gosh, this is the first time this kid has ever asked for a vegetable. And she took a picture of him like smiling, eating a carrot, and we put it next to a side-by-side of a picture when he was 2 years old and he was looking at a carrot very critically. And, you know, so it doesn't happen overnight, but, you know, this is the goal for our families, is to just tell them, listen, just like anything you're ever going to teach your kids in life, sometimes you have to do it more than once. And when it comes to learning flavors, you have to do it a whole bunch of times, but don't give up. And I think sometimes like families get discouraged because we know meal times can be struggles for a lot of families. So we want to give families another tool to keep trying.
Super job. Yeah, I mean, one thing you did mention earlier is that you've got people who use it with their older parents as well.
Yes.
So that's something I thought that stood out. You'd think that most people, once they get, I don't know, 60s, 70s, that they know what they like. So can you actually retrain an older person's palate then?
You know, I don't know what the goal is for those adults that are using it on their parents. Maybe it's payback or something. I'm not perfectly sure. I don't think that most of the adults that are using it with their parents are trying to train their palate. I think what they've noticed is that sometimes the diet becomes very limited as adults get older, that they only have a couple of foods that they like. And this is actually quite similar to in pediatric population, which I know geriatric populations hate to be compared to pediatrics, so just forget I said that. But in the pediatric population, we have a lot of very restrictive eating patterns. There are some kids that will only eat a certain color of food, a certain texture of food, and it becomes extremely difficult in those kids to even try to get them to explore, because they won't try something that's a color they're not used to. They won't try something that's a texture they're not used to. So I think that in a lot of adults that are using it in their adult parents, their aging parents, I think it's more just to offer some variety to their diet and offer maybe some micronutrients that they're not otherwise getting if they won't take a multivitamin or something to that extent. Even we actually just got an email a couple of weeks ago from a feeding therapist who was working with a child that has some pretty severe sensory challenges and a very restrictive eating pattern. And she said she put a few piles of EasyPeasie on his tray, and he dipped in one of his favorite foods to the powder and he ate it, and she was over the moon. She sent me an email immediately after her feeding session, and I told her aside from helping families that are trying to get kids used to new flavors, when we can offer an opportunity for very restrictive pattern kids to try something new, that just makes my little pediatrician heart flutter. So I think it's for those kids, I think, an opportunity to give them something that they would have never tried in the whole form is really cool.
Excellent.
Yeah, I understand that autistic children have a very, very narrow, typically very narrow diet. They only like 1 or 2 foods, and if you try to change that, they freak out. Yes,
Chef, you're absolutely right. That's been my experience as well, in meeting a lot of families that have children on the spectrum, that sometimes their kids, like you said, have a very limited diet in terms of the color of something, or sometimes they can even be quite brand loyal, and they know the look of their favorite cheese, and how us food businesses like to mess around with our packaging sometimes and change the labels, and sometimes even if it's the same food inside, just a label change can really throw those kids for a loop. So there are definitely lots of families out there that are struggling with kids that are not going to be exploratory kids and just try something new because you put it on their plate.
Excellent. Now, you mentioned micronutrients before.
Yes.
How rich is EasyPeasie in micronutrients?
Yeah, so we have a little bit of vitamin A, a little bit of vitamin C, a little bit of iron. All of our nutrition back labels are on our website, and actually here on the back of we don't have a whole lot of real estate there, but they're on the back of the labels as well. So it's not like taking a vitamin. On our labels, you won't see 100% of anything, any macro or micronutrient from EasyPeasie. Just in life, just like in food, there's no complete foods out there as well. So, I always tell families our goal is not to be a vitamin substitute. It really is about real food and teaching the palate, the smell, and the flavor. Yeah. But yes, we do have a small amount of micronutrients, and there's about a little bit less than a gram of protein and about a gram of fiber in every teaspoon.
Excellent.
Excellent macros.
You've taken us thoroughly through EasyPeasie. Thank you for that.
Yay! Awesome.
It's been good fun to find out about it, and
cool.
I'm sure it's going to be interesting.
So I have to wonder: do Mark and I qualify as elders, and should we start sprinkling our food with your products?
Yes, I will definitely send you guys some samples. It's definitely time. There's no time better than the present.
Just don't tell my son, otherwise he's going to force me to to do that.
Okay, I got you.
Super job. Well, thank you, Jamelah. It's been lovely having you.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you, Chef.
And I guess it's time for my jokey ending.
Oh, yay.
Yeah. And thank you again, Jamelah, for being on the Low Carb Paleo Show. And as we say in Texas, à votre santé, y'all.
You hear that everywhere in Texas.
That's very common.
Thanks
Maybe
again.
in Florida.
Okay.